Hello, everyone. Uh, we're starting here. Me, Jood and Sara Lian will be talking about cybersecurity, security and aviation, physical systems, and Sara will take off, inshallah, the first part of the presentation.
Hello everyone. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Hope all of you and each of you are doing fine. Thank you, Women in Cybersecurity Middle East, for having us. As Jood said, my name is Sara Layan, and her name is obviously Jood ALGassim, and we're here today to speak to you about security in aviation, cyber physical systems. I'm gonna start off the first half of the presentation, and after that, my partner will be taking over. So the presentation is basically our research, which we did in one of the courses on university. So the project was actually constructed in 3 stages. The phases will be highlighted throughout the presentation. The project contained many segments, but here are the parts that we believe that are most comprehensive. Sorry. The first part I'm going to start with is what is cyber physical systems, followed by security and security risks. After that, assets, then threat and mitigation, security analysis, uh, aviation architecture, security model, system architecture, vulnerabilities. I'm going to start with the first part, which is defining aviation and cyber physical systems. I'm actually going to divide the topic into 2 parts, aviation and cyber physical systems. The meaning of cyber physical system is that we integrate technology data and physical actions, while aviation is the air transport system. So basically, we're integrating aviation into the cyber physical systems. Moving on to the security risks found in the aviation. The security risks reasons are hyperconnectivity, which means person-to-person and person-to-machine communication in network organizations, lack of centralized frameworks, which are protocols and rules, followed by wireless connections, which are found on the air transport system. The attacks that are found on the aviation system, most of the attacks are denial of services, interception of data. Moving on to the first segment of our research, which was domain analysis, where we actually talked about the application usage, and I'm going to explain to you the other parts in the following slides, inshallah. The application usage is basically divided into 3 parts: the cyberspace, the physical world, and the integration of both the cyber and the physical, which is cyber physical system. I'm going to start off with the cyberspace. Cyberspace is basically networks, softwares, computing, and storage. Examples on that are data throughput, processing delay, software reliability, and so forth. Moving on to the physical world, which is infrastructure, hardware, humans, and processes. Examples on the performance are safety, capacity, costs, revenue, public health, and so forth. The integration is basically about controllers, sensors, and actuators. An example on that is our topic, aviation systems. I'm going to move on to the assets. As our topic says that we have 2 parts, cyber and physical, so I'm going to divide them into 2 parts. First, the cyber, which is flight operational planning data, passenger personnel, which is passengers information, voice communication systems, the systems that are used to communicate with land and aircraft information systems. The physical assets are cargo, passengers, and networking information technology. Moving on to threats and mitigations. As we know that every problem has a solution, or at some point we'll find a solution. So the threats here in the ACPS are categorized into 3 subcategories. First of all, the cyber, followed by the physical, and finally the integration, cyber physical. Threats may be either intentional or unintentional. I'm gonna start off with the cyber threats. Yes, cyber threats and mitigations. So the intentional cyber threats are denial of service, unauthorized access, modification of data, and so forth. The unintentional are logical, such as mistakes made by any code and so forth. Physical, organizational, depending on the organization of the aviation system or something. The mitigation of the intentional and unintentional are virtual private networks, encryption systems, digital certificates, digital signatures. Moving on to the physical, the intentional are hijacking, taking over the plane system, infrastructure destruction, unauthorized intrusions, the unintentional or natural catastrophes such as um, rain and hazardous rain and so forth, human error, mistakes made by human without noticing that they did a mistake. Mitigations are surveillance, passenger screening, and airspace monitoring. And finally, the integration of both the cyber and the physical attacks that are exploited by, as I said, integration of both genres. The attacks are jamming, snooping, and the mitigations are of fingerprints, actuators, and sensors. As I mentioned before, that the cyber physical uses controllers, actuators, and sensors. So here you can find the actors and threats, which means that other ways of mentioning threats and mitigation. It can be the attacks can be, as I said before, cyber and physical, and the impact are going to be on both, either the cyber or the physical. I'm going to start off with the cyber. The threat here includes spoofing, misuse of data, software bugs. Examples of mitigation are data security and privacy, secure software distribution. Let's go to the other part, which is about cyber and physical. The example threat on the cyber and the physical includes spoofing of ISPN to mislead aircraft and misuse of ISP out to track aircraft. The example of mitigation is spoofing location privacy. The physical and the cyber part threat includes radio jamming, ground station compromise. Mitigation is include detection of unknown sources of RF energy. And finally, the last part, which is physical and physical, example include laser attacks, physical sabotage, and hijacking. Example of mitigation include passenger baggage cargo screening. Moving on to the vulnerabilities found in the aviation systems. I'm going to start off with the platform of the aviation, which includes default configuration, which is when we use a configuration, it is set to default measurements. We're not supposed to. That's a vulnerability if you set it, if you keep it to the default measurements. Buffer overflow, malware protection not installed, while on the network, improper security configurations, lack of firewalls, unsafe physical ports. So we're supposed to focus on these parts in order to keep our aviation system protected. Here are other platforms such as configuration vulnerability, which is about operating system and application software patches developed and delayed or maintained. Here is the hardware vulnerability, which actually I focused on two parts while reading this, which is the no physical protection for critical systems and remote access to ICS components. Moving on to the software vulnerability, which is, as I mentioned before, buffer overflow. Installing security functions can't be started through the default startup. And finally, unsafe industry-wide arrangement. And the last part is platform malware vulnerabilities. Malware protection is not installed. Malware protection is software of definition of malware is not up to date. So as I mentioned before, we're supposed to focus on the vulnerabilities in order to keep our aviation system safe. Um, so my part, I'm sorry. So my part is done, and my partner Jood will be taking over to discuss the two segments of our project: design analysis and security analysis. Thank you for listening to me. Okay, so my friend is having issues with her system, so I'm gonna keep on taking over her part till she fixes it or something. So her part is basically, as I said, is about design analysis. The first part is about system architecture, how the system of the aviation works. The first part is flight control, well, which is basically about collision avoidance, tracking and navigation, and autopilot. Moving on to the cabin and passenger, which basically about the part of the aviation where it's about the passengers and the cabins in the airplane. So it's about air humidity, entertainments found on the plane, and ad hoc. Moving on to the aircraft maintenance, which is taking care of the aircraft, which is all about wireless sensors, sensor fabric. And here you can find the aviation system architecture, which is basically the architecture of the aviation. Um, since our topic is basically about the integration of the cyber and the physical, so it's obvious that the aviation system is about integration. So here you can find the cyberspace and the ground network sensor actuator and the physical world, which is basically all about physical world of tangible objects. The cyberspace, as mentioned before, it's about sensors, actuators, and controllers. So this is the CPS view. And here you can find the non-CPS view, which is about interacting ground and airborne and uh, stylized system. So this model is actually the model we created when we were working on our project. So it's an architecture model that we used Cisco Packet Tracer for. And my partner is back, and I'm gonna let her take from the top, from her part. She'll explain it better. Okay, Jood, you can take over now.
Sorry for the technical problem. Just Windows is not good at updating. It's like updating at any moment that the operating system wants. So sorry for that issue. And thank you, Sara, for taking over the previous on your section, and I think you started mine. So sorry for that, and thank you again. So starting design analysis. The last part, or the third part in our project. It was really interesting while doing it. So we obtained a lot of information. First, the system architecture. We got the results that we have three main parts in the system architecture. First, the flight control, which contains collision avoidance, tracking, and navigation autopilot. And the second category, or second part of the system architecture, was cabin and passenger, the cabin itself. So air humidity and entertainment and ad hoc were the main parts in that subdomain, in that domain. The third part was the aircraft maintenance. It is where the wireless sensors and sensor fabric take place. This is like a diagram or a figure that illustrated the architecture of aviation systems. We can see on the right side how the physical world and cyberspace is integrated. Considering the aviation, or our main topic, which is aviation systems in here. And the left part is showing how the aircraft systems and the ground systems are all, and the airborne themselves are all interacting. So it is important to know how these systems are like designed and architectured in that way. So we find this diagram really clarifying that system architecture. We're not going into details, but this is like an overview of everything in aviation system architecture. This was a proposed security model that Sara and I did using Cisco Packet Tracer. It is one of the tools that we used in concerning the networking and how these sensors and different devices are interacting. So we can see that these sensors, the aircraft sensors, as I mentioned before, like 2 slides before, that the air cabin contains some sensors that need to be interacted or need to be communicated with the ground devices. So we can see on the left side these sensors. There's motion sensors, wind sensors, temperature sensors. These all are all connected to the ground system that need to be maintained, and so we can know that these sensors are, these data and these sensors can be, how can it be helpful, and how can it be like achieving the goal of aviation security, aviation cyber physical systems. Another diagram again. Here, this is the asset tracing in this security model. It is very important to know where the assets are and where are they placed in these systems, because such critical and very important systems, we want these, we want the passengers and the air cabin itself to be safe as much as possible. So the asset tracing here means or emphasizes the point that the location of the location of these assets are important, and if these locations are like located in another place, how these can be more vulnerable. So it is very important to know the locations of these assets. Another part of this presentation is to analyze the security, which is like one of the main goals of this research that we did. So when we conducted this security research or security analysis, we resulted that we know that ACPS or aviation cyber physical system subdomains are mainly in three parts: the in-aircraft network, and the wireless data link, and the off-board systems. And we're going to be talking about each one of them and each responsibility, security risks, and potential vulnerabilities and affected assets. So first, let's talk about the in-aircraft network. Its main responsibility that when we conducted the security analysis here, we found that it compromises the security analysis of air control, airline information services, and passenger information and entertainment services. The affected assets, because it's in aircraft network, we can see that flight operational and planning data, passenger personal data, and aircraft information systems are the main affected assets in here. Moving on to the security risks, there are a lot of security risks, but mainly, or what we saw the most like high priority risks are the rouge access points, the ad hoc, and the DOS, or as known as denial of service. It's the last part here is the potential vulnerability. What are the potential vulnerabilities over here? The operating system and the software application patches, and the default configurations. Default configurations are really bad in every system. So it is a potential vulnerability in here as well. Moving on to the second subdomain, wireless data link. It's basically the communication between the cabin or between the aircraft itself with the systems and with the monitoring, management, and the ground systems. So it's a responsibility that it uses ADSB for surveillance technology, in which an aircraft determines its position via satellite navigation. So we can see that the affected assets here are airspace data, security relevant data, and the software and algorithms and protocols that are used in this wireless data link. The most security risks that we found, the high priority security risks, are flooding, jamming, and injection. So if there was injection between this wireless data, it can cause really big problems with the aircraft location and movements. So potential vulnerabilities here are unencrypted communications, and uninstalled intrusion detection prevention software. Moving on to the last ACPS subdomain that we found in security analysis, its main responsibility that the impact here, aircraft safety, will heavily use commercial grade hardware and software. So the affected assets here, the digital content, voice communications, radar, and satellite systems. The security risks in this case, false data injection, eavesdropping, and false alarm. The most potential vulnerabilities that we found that there is no physical protection, or we can say it's very weak, and weakness in detecting and preventing unauthorized access. So we reached to our conclusion. So we basically talked about the domain analysis, design analysis, and security analysis. This was our the three main parts we talked in here and that we covered in our research as well. Before going to the Q&A part, me and Sara want to really thank to thank Women in Data Science and Cybersecurity MiddleEast for this opportunity. And as well, we want to thank Dr. Anis for giving us this opportunity as well, and for helping us in everything in this research. So moving on to the questions. I'm gonna read it out loud. So how you ensure encryption connections between the sensors? This is the first question. The encryption connections between the sensors, the communication, it's not only between the sensors, but mainly the sensors are communicating with like a router that would be maintained by the management system or management office. So there's no connection. There is connection, but the most important is that they're connected to the, as I said. So, but encryption can be reached with a lot of many. We can say that we can, like, cryptography, hashing, and all of these. There's a lot of techniques, because this is a really broad question, but there's a lot of techniques to encrypt data, whether it was between sensors or between any devices. So is there another question? Okay, how do you manage the security over assets? As you say, it is important to know our assets, asset register, risk register, and how else we can plan security controls over these assets. What I mentioned is the asset location is important, like locating the assets themselves. Like, are they in a safe place? Are they accessible from any intruder, or are they just in a place that only validated or only authorized people can access? This is what we actually mentioned before.
And there is a part where you could use a checklist to keep your assets in check, to check if the security is the level of security and if the level of the risk. So it's planned all over the plane and followed by a checklist.
Yes, and it is always it happens regularly. It's not like a one-time assurance and that's it. No, because assets can be relocated or dislocated by any person. So the answer is that we have to know by using these checklists, as Sarah said, and to. Okay, so going to the third question, for security risks, how are the human-related risks addressed? Example, internal sabotage with the organization. We do a lot of security training and awareness. How is it for resources who have direct access to the aircraft?
Since it's about internal sabotage, so it means that an employee or any a personnel working in the organization could have revenge. So it's considered as a security risk. But even if you do security training, some people have their own mindset. But they do internal sabotage and other non-good things.
So any other question? We will be waiting for a few minutes in case anyone have any question. Please type it and we'll be answering, inshallah. So I think there is no more questions coming. So as we said in conclusion, we covered 3 parts. The domain analysis. We knew about the domain more in order to like go deeper. Then we went deeper to the design analysis. Then our like one of the main objectives is security analysis, which we discovered a lot of information regarding security in these aviation cyber physical systems, and how these systems are really critical. And so yes, these parts are covered, and I think there's no any more question. So thank you for listening, and sorry again for the technical issue that occurred. And special thanks again for women in cyber security, Middle East, and thank you again for Sara, my colleague. And yes, Sara,
Thank you everyone for listening, and hope you enjoyed our session and that you've learned new things about ACPS systems, or if you'd never heard of the subject, I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you, Women in Cybersecurity, and Dr. Anis, and my partner. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.